Welcome back to Gundam HQ. Today I have yet another exciting interview with one of the voice actors who helped bring some of our favorite Gundam characters to life in the West. His name is Matt Embry, the voice actor behind Kyoji and Schwarz from the English dub of G Gundam. While the name might not be familiar to everyone, if you're a fan of G Gundam, I'm sure the voice will be. Before we get started, remember to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell, as well as follow my Twitter at GundamHQ to stay up to date on all things Gundam. That way you won't be out of the loop on any upcoming interviews, some of which I've already recorded. So keep your eyes peeled for one coming soon starring the voice behind a certain blonde character from the original Mobile Suit Gundam series. If you want to see more like this, consider supporting me on Patreon or joining our Gundam HQ Discord to meet and talk with fellow Gundam fans like yourself. You can find all the links to do so in the description below. Without further ado, let's get right into the interview. Before we get started, could you please introduce yourself so that way people who are maybe not quite as familiar with you are a little more connected to who you are and what you do and what kind of person you are?
Sure. My name is Matthew Embry, and I'm a producer, director, voice talent, and advocate for patients with multiple sclerosis.
All right, and then for our first question, did you actually have any familiarity with Gundam before auditioning for your roles?
No, it was. I hadn't had any idea about the storyline or the series before I auditioned.
And then, how did you end up getting involved with the series originally?
Yeah, so what happens up here in Canada? I mean, as a voice actor, you have opportunity to audition for, say, studios. So there was a studio up here where I went in and auditioned. So you do a number of voices. Does that make sense? So then the studio kind of has you in a catalog, and then shows, I believe the studio then pitches you to shows, and then you audition for them. So I think they audition your voice, and then you come in and you do some reading, and then that's how it's cast.
And of course, as people know, you did end up getting those parts as Kyoji and Schwarz Bruder in G Gundam.
Yeah.
So what was it kind of like playing two sides of the same character in a sense, even though they are two distinct characters?
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty interesting stuff. When you're voice acting, you also get to see the visuals of the character. So you actually, it's kind of like mask work where you actually get to look at, the physical different or the animated differences. So your voice kind of takes on those characteristics of the visuals you're seeing.
And then when you first auditioned for the roles, did you know that they were going to be connected, or what all did you know ahead of time?
No, I didn't know anything. I went in very blind. So again, and it was actually really interesting. I mean, this was quite a while ago, so forgive me if there's some things I can't remember. It was really interesting for me because we didn't get the scripts ahead of time. So we got scripts, as we went to actually learn about the characters and where things were going.
And which of these two characters did you actually audition for first? Of course, they are kind of linked, so did you know about both characters ahead of time, or did you only audition for one and then get told about the other later? Or how did that kind of work out for you?
No, I can't really remember how that went. I believe I believe I auditioned for Schwarz Bruder first. And so that was that. And when I had that, then it was after that I was explained to me that there were actually two roles.
Oh, okay, that's kind of cool. All right, and then moving on kind of to some more video game related kind of questions. Not many Gundam games actually receive English dubs, but you did get an uncredited role as Kyoji in Gundam Battle Assault 2, but you didn't end up returning to your character in future installments and future games, such as the Dynasty Warriors Gundam series. Was there any particular reason you decided not to return to voicing the character, or were you simply too busy with some of your other projects?
I don't know. I mean, I think maybe I could have been too busy at the time, or maybe they found somebody else who was better. So I'm not too sure.
Well, I don't know if it was someone who was better, but they did find somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of the G Gundam voice actors did end up getting replaced. I know Domon's voice actor, he's like a dentist, I believe, or something like that. And I know he moved on.
Mark. Yeah, he's actually a doctor, I think.
Oh, wow.
He's a surgeon, actually. Don't hold me to that, but his name's Mark Gaffa.
I knew he moved on to something else, but I think the only character that really actually stayed was Master Asia. I think everyone else got replaced or something along those lines. And I think the new voice actors did pretty all right, but they just weren't those iconic voices that everyone had kind of grown so attached to and enjoyed so much.
Right. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And then do you personally have a favorite character between Schwarz and Kyoji? And then which of the two was kind of a little more fun to voice?
Yeah, Schwarz Bruder was more fun to voice. I mean, he was really aggressive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
And definitely, and I recall distinctly doing several takes with his work. Kyoji was easier, I think, but Schwarz Bruder was more of a challenge.
And then in the future, if you ever had the opportunity to return to either of these characters, would you be interested in doing that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I would definitely go back. Yeah, I mean, I think what was really interesting for me was, as the voice actor, we kind of learned the storyline as we went because we didn't get pages ahead of time. I mean, and you wouldn't get your pages until you actually went into the studio, right? So in a way, it was kind of like you were watching the series. And I recall, and I've told this story before at the end when, it gets very dramatic between the two of them. I was like, this is really powerful content. Like quite emotional at the end of it, just thinking like, wow, that was really kind of next level, especially the visuals and stuff. It was very, I don't know how the viewers found it, but I found it kind of it was, again, really interesting experience being inside of it, but also learning it as I went like a viewer.
And that actually leads pretty well into some of my other questions. As a viewer, how do you kind of view the show? Like, what's your kind of opinion on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall, again, you're asking me to kind of go way back. I mean, I recall it being a very emotional show, and one that's got a lot of layers to it. And again, that would be primarily for me in the visuals, right? I mean, the script was the script, but the visuals, I thought the animation was really powerful.
And you mentioned it a little bit ago, but you weren't necessarily too familiar with how the fans received the show in the West?
Yeah, no, I wasn't too familiar. I mean, I knew it was a success, right? And I knew that, people had told me they'd heard my voice in multiple countries, I believe. But I think that, and it's interesting to see the long tail of it, right? Because that was way back in like 2002, I think we were voicing it. 2003.
The earlier Gundam shows, by that I mean like the earlier dubs, including
right.
Wing and G Gundam, a lot of people actually prefer the dubs for those, which is pretty great. I think a lot of people just kind of attach to them. In most cases, a lot of people would say, I prefer the subtitles, like the Japanese audio and the subtitles. But in this case, I think people just really kind of grew fond of the original voice actors just because that's what they grew up with. And I don't know, it had that special kind of quality to them, I guess.
Right, cool.
And I think it's especially true for G Gundam too. I mean, all the friends that I know that are really in love with G Gundam always say, I have to watch it in the dub because the dub is so much better.
Oh, cool.
And I think I personally agree too. I mean, the Japanese voice is good and all, but I think just overall the English dub has a little bit of that specialness to it that I mentioned before. And out of curiosity, have you been keeping up with Gundam at all recently?
I haven't actually. I apologize.
No, you're fine.
I mean, I definitely see the figures and stuff like that, especially when I travel internationally, right? You certainly see it's still going strong.
Oh yeah, for sure. Gundam's gotten much bigger since G Gundam. We have all sorts of mainline stories and sideline stories, and manga and comic books and games and all that kind of stuff. It's ridiculous. It's everywhere now.
Yeah.
And G Gundam was one of your earliest acting roles that I could find, at least. And a lot of actors and creators, they look back on their first projects and think about things they could have done better or done differently. If you could go back and change anything about your performance or your performances, would you? And if so, what would it be?
If I could go back, I mean, I think that, when you're a young actor, and I was very young at the time, and an opportunity crosses your path, you're really happy you have an opportunity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that it was the first long series that I'd ever done. And so I think that, going back, I could have done maybe some more voice work prior to going into the booth, like warming up and things like that, like actually work on the craft itself more, where it was kind of second nature back then. But now looking back and having done so much more voice work, I realize that it's an instrument. Your voice is an instrument that you should be putting more I should have been putting more attention into it.
And since you've been through so much since dubbing G Gundam, whether it be as an actor, a director, writer, or producer, do you think you've gotten a better perspective on acting or film in general?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think when you voice a series like that and for so many episodes, it really gives you a wonderful sense of how to, construct the image and marry it with sound. So, I mean, I think that, I've directed a lot of pictures and commercials, but it definitely gave me an understanding of ADR. That like if we don't get it in the field, don't worry, we can get this in the booth. I mean, I've seen what they've done with this animated series. Does that make sense? It really gave me that kind of understanding. And especially even weird things like, some of the actors I never even saw, like physically, like fellow actors. I never physically saw them. So just that concept of that we can actually, you watch the married picture, it's hard to believe that, we're ever even together, right?
Speaking of all the different kind of things you do, whether it be writing or acting or directing, what kind of got you into doing all that? I mean, you clearly have to have some kind of passion for it to dive in that deep.
Yeah, I mean, I've been making little short films and everything since I was a little kid. So, I mean, it's just been something that I was born with and that I just kept trying to master the craft, right? It's filmmaking is not easy. It's a very, very long process, and it's also, there's so much to learn. Right. And that's where I think that, being so lucky to be on the ground floor to voice a series like that, it taught me so much. And then, we went right into, I was producing at the same time. I was directing a whole other series at the exact same time I was doing that. So it was, I was right in the thick of it. Right. And to be honest, I haven't really slowed down.
Yeah, I can tell. When I was looking you up originally, I was looking just for Kyoji, and then I found your like who you were, and I looked you up on IMDb, and I saw all the different kind of stuff you were doing, and I was surprised at just how many different projects you've done. Like I said, you're a director, you're an actor, you're a writer, producer. Those are some of the 4 biggest jobs in film at all. And of those 4 jobs, like which do you personally kind of find most interesting or most fulfilling?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I do give lectures on this, and I think it's being part of the team. You work in this business, you work on so many different projects, you work on so many different genres, and, very few projects actually stand the test of time. And I think that, obviously this one has, but very few do. And I think that people need to understand that and not to be disappointed in that fact, but to understand that it's a job, and that, how you treat people on set and like creating those teams and being a good person and building a group of people around you who are equally, want to do some great work. And I think that's, if you can leave your day and go home and say that was a really good day and productive, and we tried to make something as best as we could, and then I think you've won.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all of that. And since I mentioned before, you've done so many different projects. Of the projects you have done, what are some of your favorites, would you say? And what kind of makes them your favorites?
Well, definitely from a voicing perspective, this one would be my favorite voice perspective. But from a documentary, I mean, I guess, I don't know, that's really hard to say, right? Like it's, you know what I mean? It's really kind of hard. Each one has their own little, their own thing. I mean, I have my favorite location, and that's the Field of Dreams in very close to you in Dyersville, Iowa. And I think that it's a beautiful place people can go check out.
And if people were looking to kind of catch up on the things you do, some of your films or your documentaries, where would be the best kind of place to do that?
Yes, I mean, right now I've got a film on Amazon Prime, which I think everybody can access around the world. More or less everyone in the world can access it, and that's on Amazon Prime. And then another one, I've got another, and that's called Living Proof. I have another film called Painkiller, Inside the Opioid Crisis, and that's on the TELUS VOD in Canada, and in the US now you can get it on YouTube. And it's just type in Painkiller, Inside the Opioid Crisis, and they released it on there as well.
You also do plenty of community work too, including volunteering and that kind of stuff related to your multiple sclerosis website, which is kind of designed to, help out people who have been recently diagnosed or they've been diagnosed for a while. And I think it's a really big responsibility. I mean, especially on top of all the different stuff you do already. You do with film, whether it be producing or acting and writing. I mean, what kind of brought you to take on such a big extra responsibility on top of the ones you already did have and do that?
Well, I mean, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1995, And I was, really blessed that my father was able to find a different way for me to treat that, and that was through a really strict diet and exercise program. And over years, we've tried to get this information to the public. And right now, the community, the medical ecosystem that surrounds multiple sclerosis is complicated. And I've just kind of stepped out and made a website called mshope.com with all free information. And Living Proof is also an extension of that. It's a documentary about our journey. And we just try to reach as many patients and families as we possibly can and try to bring hope.
I think that's amazing. I mean, you had this issue for yourself when you were younger, and then you kind of stepped outside of yourself and you said, hey, I know how I can kind of help with this. And now I'm going to work towards helping other people with this. And I think that's really cool, and it's really important. It's great that you're doing that. Thank
you. I appreciate that. I mean, it's why we're here, right? To help others, try to make a difference.
And that's it for the questions I had for today. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with some of the people that are watching right now?
I don't know. I mean, thank you so much for doing this. Again, it's incredible to have the long tail of this and people to still take interest and to keep it alive. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for coming on too. It's always great to kind of hear the behind the scenes kind of details that you wouldn't necessarily hear otherwise. And it's great to kind of hear your perspective on the show itself and, the characters and all that kind of fun stuff. And, best of luck to you too. I mean, in general, you do so much stuff. It's ridiculous how many different things you do. You have 4 different kind of big parts in film, whether it's acting, writing, directing, all that kind of stuff on top of your community work. I think it's really incredible that you managed to deal with all of that at once. It's amazing, really.
I appreciate that, man. I mean, I believe we're born, we're born out into this world or out of this world, however you want to say it. And it's like, we've only got so much time. And so I think that, with this time is our greatest asset, we got to take advantage of it, and you got to grab it and try to, and if you're bringing good, you're bringing light, you're bringing truth into the world, then you will be motivated to do as much as you possibly can.
And you've definitely done that. So again, thank you so much for coming on, and best of luck to you.
Thanks, brother. God bless you.
And that concludes my interview with Matt Embry, the voice actor behind Kyoji and Schwarz from G Gundam. Consider showing him some support for coming on and sharing with us by following him on Twitter or checking out some of the links to his work, all of which you can find in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe with notifications turned on to keep up to date with all the videos I release on the channel. And if you're considering supporting me beyond subscribing and liking the video, I have recently started up a Patreon. Showing support there is a great way to make sure I'm able to afford to make these videos as often as possible. As always, thank you so much for watching, and this is Gundam HQ, signing off.